And nobody cares about inflation until about 3 years ago. Every plan I've ever done my entire career is adjusted for inflation, saying, hey, the money you need in year 1 is less. In year 5, it's going to be more. It's going to be more because life is more expensive. There's no stopping that at all.
Hello and welcome to Unf Your Finances podcast with your host, Nick St. George. I'm your podcast producer, RJ Malik. Nick, good to see you again. And my question to you is, what do you have for us on this podcast?
Let me reach into my bag of tricks. We're going to do some, it's Unf Your Finances, right? We're going to play into the name, lean into this. But what are some of those, what are risks to your retirement? You hear the different buzzwords or you see those commercials of call us for a free brochure, but just high level, like what are some of the things that can cause some headaches, cause some issues there? Everyone wants to retire, right? I think most people I meet, when do you want to retire? Yesterday. Like it's no, it's called work for a reason. No, it's not super happy fun time, but it is a means to an end. But at some point you want to be able to enjoy life on your terms. At the end of the day, think about retirement is you're paying yourself to enjoy yourself. So you got to sacrifice some things on the front end with savings and deferring. And we live in a world of just shiny objects and wanting it now. But if you can think about that snowball effect, like what you do in your 20s, make it even easier in your 30s and your 40s, and it just snowballs. And before long, you're like, oh my God, I have my nest egg. I can do this. I can pay myself not to work is kind of another way of looking at retirement.
Mm.
Now, one of those things is when you plan for it is longevity risk. And if you look at some of these different charts, they're showing like we're living longer. Like, hey, drugs are getting better. We're eating healthier. It's easier to get access to healthier foods. Think about it, with internet and online ordering, you don't have to just count on your grocery store or maybe your farmer's market. You can get a hold of a lot of different things, but that's great. Who doesn't want to, I don't know, life expectancy to 65 doesn't sound all that great. Like, oh, give me 80s.
Yeah.
And another thing is eating better, all those better drugs, all that stuff usually tie together with kind of your net worth. So a lot of the people I'm working with, they're getting even better exercise. You have the meal plan stuff. So they're skewing longer, and not as many people are doing manual labor. It's not like, hey, you're going to the plant and working. Like there are a lot more people working office jobs or virtual, and it's a difference. And we're seeing that longevity. Now that's great. Downside is how are you going to make your money last that long? Like you have these people talking about financial independence, retire early. All right. How are you going to save enough? All right. If you start saving at 25, retire at 45, how are you going to save in 20 years to last you 40 years? Like that's that conundrum. And of course, if we could find out, hey, your last day of life is going to be, okay, this day on that hour, it's a lot easier to solve for a plan of, we know your expiration date.
Yes.
It's not, but planning doesn't work that well. So we kind of got to go with averages. Hey, is longevity a thing in your family? Yeah. How long do your parents, how healthy are you? Do you have any health concerns? What's going on? But on average, we're planning. When I run a plan, we're looking at you 88, 90 years old is where we need your money to run from.
Because things change. You mentioned, life expectancy. Both my grandparents were gone. One was gone by 54 and the other one was gone by 65. And that influenced my dad, who was like, okay, he didn't expect to live that long because relatives on his side were not living that long. Well, he lived till he was 87. And that has put my mom in, not a real difficult situation, but she has to really, really watch her money. She's not as set as we thought she would be. So,
and it's tricky. Think about like just how long your money needs to last and to save, right? The more you save, the easier it is to get to retirement, but you do want to like, hey, celebrate your wins real time, right? Like, and the other thing is with most retirement plan, it's somewhat linear, right? Hey, we're going to take out this at this percentage rate, this. And usually in retirement, more often than not, it's more of a barbell. Your first couple of years of retirement, you spend more. Hey, I always wanted to go to Europe. Hey, I want to do this. you're almost like overly excited. Hey, let me get this done. Let me get this done. Let me go here. Oh, let me take the grandkids to Disney or whatever it might be. So you overspend a little bit early on. Then you get to that point where it's kind of that lull of, hey, I don't want to get on that plane. Like you kind of like coast a little bit. And then you get that back end barbell of healthcare. And that kind of takes us into the next one is healthcare and housing. So two major expenses that just escalate quickly is prescription drugs, long-term care. Those things go up fast, and it's not cheap. And more often than not, when I talk to people about this, what's more important, leaving some type of big legacy or making sure your parents are taken care of that you don't have to like wipe their ass? Like I have zero interest in taking care of my parents. Like I'm not looking for a legacy to be left for me. So, hey, how do we make sure we have you covered for that stuff?
Right. Right.
And housing, like, is your house paid off? Is your house going into retirement something that is elderly friendly? Is it a 3-story house or a raised ranch? Are you going to want to go up to your bedroom on the 3rd floor when you're 75? Like, what is that going to look like? Do you want to live near your family members? Where are the kids, grandkids? Where do they end up going? Like, that's one of my things. I don't know where I want to retire. I want to see where the kids go.
Right.
Where my kids are and dictate a lot more about where I live more than anything else. But looking at those housing options, do you need a somewhat assisted living? There's so many different levels of assisted care. And you see a lot of people pricing out long-term care needing to like replace every single dollar. Now, typically, if you end up in one of those types of places, like you're not going out to eat. Like it's you don't have to replace every dollar of your life in those coverages. And we can go into the math. If you have questions, sit down. This is more one-on-one conversation. But a lot of times people overprice or overinsure their need because, hey, are you going out to eat? Or do you have a car payment? If you're in assisted living, that stuff is getting sold. You're not using it. Like what you actually need to cover your assisted living varies. And the other thing is if you plan for it in advance, if you look at this, the healthcare, the long-term care, that sort of thing, when you're 55, pricing looks a lot better than you're 65. And then you get to 70 and most of them may not even offer paying it, right? Like insurance like to have your money for a while. They don't want to pay it out that quickly. So it is definitely something to prepare, have that conversation early on. And that's why you got to have somewhat of a wiggle room in your budget.
So you're talking about a wiggle room in the budget. Is there a percentage that you put to that, or?
Well, you kind of look at that 4% rule. I think you can get away with being a little bit higher than that. But hey, that's kind of a floor. Say, hey, in a worst case scenario, you can do 4. Hey, there's math that you can do. You can look at almost 8 and still make some things work depending on returns. And you got to have some ebb and flow. But like, hey, there's wiggle room there. Okay. You don't want to have to be like, hey, we're down to our last dollar this month and it's the 20th and we can't do it. And it gets ugly quick. So it is and that's why you adjust the plan. Every plan I do adjusts for inflation and going up. So basically, if you start retirement at $7,000 a month, 10 years in, it might be up to $12,000 a month. You're like, oh, I'm not going to spend that more. But I'm like, think about the last couple of years. You're not living the high life. You're just trying to maintain. Yeah. Everything is more expensive. There is no more dollar menu. Like it's tricky.
Right. All right.
And transitioning in on that, like talking about, hey, how do you keep up with your spending? Like, hey, if you retired this way and you thought your budget was this, inflation's got you, but also let's just be honest. If you're an executive and you've told people what to do your whole life, it's hard to be told, hey, no, you probably shouldn't spend that money this month. And you don't want to. You want to continue to buy the, case of wine, go on the trip, whatever it might be. But you might have to look at working during retirement. Maybe not the level of work that you did, and especially with virtual of Zoom and everything else. You might not have to get on a plane, but you might have to bang out 15 hours a week just to consult and bridge that gap a little bit longer. That's a lot easier to do when you're 63, 65 than 78. Like, welcome to Walmart isn't exactly going to make a difference versus there's some earning potential. They don't want to pay your health insurance benefits, stuff like that. You can come in, consult in your field. There's probably people that you've worked with over your career that, hey, they need a little gray in the beard. They don't want just, hey, the kid that got out of Kellogg that has always been business school. Like, you sometimes that's one thing. I don't know, younger people seem, and I'm kind of in that middle in between of younger ones kind of struggle with that art of the deal. Like, seen recently talking about like college grads doing interviews on Zoom with their parents on camera with them.
Yeah, I've read that too. That just boggles my mind.
I can't fathom that. Like, is this like Step Brothers? Like, is that like the interview of how that works? Like,
Yeah, I read that article where, yeah, I forget where it was, but managers were saying, yeah, parents are in on these interviews, and I was like, I was reading it, I'm going, this has to be a spoof. This can't be real, but I
oh yeah,
guess it is.
no. I have not talked to a hiring manager that said yes. I've been on one, but allegedly in that report they said I want to say it was close to 10%, which just is baffling.
Wow.
But the other thing is retirement. We've talked about this a couple times, is how do you go from working 40, 50 hours to nothing? Now, don't get me wrong. That goes back to the barbell. You got a year or two. Hey, just decompress, go on that trip, reset. But there's something, and let's say you're financially set. A lot of people, hey, maybe you volunteer to keep your mind sharp. There's something said for that interaction with other people, staying active in your field, whatever it is. You like, I don't know. I'm not saying you have to go to all your continuing ed, but like, stay involved. Like, you don't want to just completely shut it down. And maybe it's mentoring. I've heard people, hey, we're going to help kids at school be, I don't know, like, oh, help at the blood bank, help here, or you go consult. Hey, I don't want to work the grind that I used to, but if you need me on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll jump on calls, help close a deal, work on the ideas of the project, whatever it might be. But it doesn't have to be the work. Like, I know I won't work like I do now 20 years from now. Will I be retired? Probably not.
Right.
Like, I can't just shut it down completely. I do enjoy, like, a lot of clients not only clients, they're friends. Like, you've seen their kids grow up. They're watching my kids grow up. You go play some golf. It's a different dynamic over time versus, hey, there's a lot more stuff going on. And then that's what I've seen with other clients. You meet with them. I want to retire as soon as possible. All right, we work on the plan. We're going to save this. Let's pay down that. And over time, they end up moving up the food chain. So instead of having to grind out 4 days a week on the road, now they only have to go to the conferences. Like, oh, all right. You have to go to Vegas 3 times a year and stay at the Venetian. You poor thing. Like, suddenly it's really nice to know that you can retire. Like, if your boss changes, if they change your goals, but if you're enjoying it and, hey, you've worked your ass off to get to where you're at, hey, knowing in the back of your mind at any point, you can tell your boss you're number one, you're out because you've hit your retirement goal. But now you're just working because, hey, this isn't bad. They're paying me well. It's not what it was when I first said, hey, I want to get out of this. So there's that point too.
All right. Very good. What's your next point?
We got that big dirty I word, inflation.
Yes.
And of course, we'll talk about interest rates, which is a hot topic now because they went up really fast. And what are they going to do with cutting rates? Because inflation almost hit 10%. And if interest rates got up to 5%, so everyone's like, oh my God, 5% interest rates. This is amazing. But if inflation's at 10%, you're losing 5% of your purchasing power. Think about it this way. If it costs you $100 to get your groceries, and now it's 110, and you only made 105, what $5 in groceries are you losing?
Right.
And that's where that purchasing power comes in. And nobody cares about inflation until about 3 years ago. Every plan I've ever done my entire career is adjusted for inflation, saying, hey, the money you need in year 1 is less. In year 5, it's going to be more. It's going to be more because life is more expensive. There's no stopping that at all. Like, inflation, how do we keep up with that?
But inflation was low. It wasn't very high, so it wasn't something that jumped out at you. Now, over the last couple of years, I was listening to a news report, and they said if you combine the last 4 years or 3.5 years, inflation is at 20%.
Oh yeah, depending on what data point you want to look at. That's those CPI numbers and stuff that they talk about is more industrial. go out to dinner. Like I'm not great at keeping my receipts, but you can go through credit card history. Hey, we go to this pizza place in town. Used to be about a $60 meal. Now it's $100.
We went to dinner in New York City. We went to went in and we stayed in a hotel, which was $600 for a night, and it wasn't the ritziest hotel. It was basically in the middle, $600 for one night. We then went to a play, and then we went to lunch first, and then we caught a matinee. Lunch for two people, $100. I got a burger and fries, and we did get an appetizer. My wife,
Oh, you monster.
yeah, my wife got like a sandwich and a salad. $100.
I believe it.
It's
Like,
crazy.
you want to go out for drinks? No, I'm going to drink at home. I can't afford to drink like I like to out. Like I don't want that bar tab.
So one weekend that we treated ourselves was close to $1,000.
My son's got this baseball tournament in Charleston at Shipyard. It's a gorgeous facility. Check it out. If you guys listen to this, Shipyard's amazing, turf fields. It's easily going to be a $3,000 weekend. $1,000, and it might be less if you use like points in the hotel.
Yeah.
But food, travel, and then, hey, poor Caroline's stuck at a baseball field and playground. Oh, can I have a slushie? Can I have this?
Of course.
And it's like, I feel like Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber. You walk away just in necessities, and it's like the paddle board, and you're like, you could bring gum. You can bring this. They're like, oh, well, that gum tastes better. It's like they're both bubble gum. What do you mean it tastes better? And it's just like,
yeah.
And the same token is like, do you want to tell them no? Is it worth arguing with them? Like, all right, fine. You want your hot dog here? Fine. Let's just move it along. And then at bigger tournaments like this, you get the vendors. So walking in, there will be probably 3 card stations. There will be necklaces, sleeves, gloves. It's all about the drip, the swag. This isn't the years of like the aluminum rod of a Easton bat. Like everything's nice. They get to have their bling, the sliding mitt.
Yeah.
Like it's obnoxious. And look, I love taking care of my kids. A lot of my stuff growing up was like, hey, second time around, nothing wrong with it. I get to still do it, but it's just like, hey, if you want this, hey, we'll put a goal on it. Let's earn it. So he's got his bubblegum glove. It's a limited edition A2000. He should last him through high school, but it's light blue and pink. And when we wear our pink jerseys, he looked pretty cool in it. And it's just like, you can get these custom gloves. He has another one that has like bow bombs on it. Like it's,
wow.
And my daughter's like, oh, well, I want my arm sleeve if I start playing softball again. And it's just like the accessories. And it's just like,
yeah.
Oh, like it never ends on cost, but like, hey, like, do I not want to do this? Are you going to tell him, hey, I can't do this? Right. Like it's,
yeah.
And I don't know. We haven't been on a big trip tournament in a while, but it's like, it just adds up.
Yeah.
Like anywhere you go. All right, fine. Flights haven't been drastically different, but like getting a rental car, getting a hotel, and like what that hotel gets you. Like I remember going to Disney for several years in a row, and by the end of it, like there was no magic, but that bill kept on going up.
Magically, it kept going.
Yeah, magically that bill keeps going up.
That's where the magic was. That's funny.
But that's the thing, like inflation and all that stuff. Oh, that won't affect me. I'm like, unless you have zero health risk and eat ramen noodles.
Right.
And I think if you only lived off of ramen noodles, you're probably going to have some health issues. Like inflation matters. So,
yeah.
And then kind of coming in for the final landing, talking about communication. We're going to talk about this. Part of financial planning, yes, we're trying to put you in the highest probability of success, but life happens. What if you get a cancer, or hey, you got to start taking care of your parents? What if you got laid off before we thought you'd work till? And some of that is, hey, we got to have an emergency fund. Hey, we're going to have this. You don't want to talk about it. Like, hey, what if you die early? Like those are the conversations, but like you still have to have that talk on the front end. Like it's not the fun part of my job. I don't want to talk about, hey, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, what your family's in trouble. Hey, like there's some clients right now about to take on a massive project. And I'm like, hey, like normally I wouldn't tell you need insurance, but with this big project coming in, like we need to cover you. Like that's part of the ongoing. 3 years ago, I never thought, hey, we need to get insurance. Like you have enough money, you're good, but you take on your risk tolerance or projects and all that stuff. Life just happens. That wasn't on the bingo card. And
You sort of have to look at the worst case scenario. You always have to keep that in the back of your mind as you're talking to your clients, right?
correct. I get the final destination. I mean, with financial planning, get behind that logging truck and it's like immediately like, oh, let me switch lanes. I don't want to be here. But with financial planning, you got to look at like, and I told him like, we need insurance for you running this project. Oh, you're being dramatic. I'm like, you can call it dramatic, but do you want to leave your family holding the bag because we didn't get this? And sometimes I tell people insurance is like your fire extinguisher underneath the sink. You want the best, cheapest one that you never use.
Right.
And I hope you tell me in a couple of years when the project's done, I was an asshole for putting you to go get your blood drawn for this policy. But hey, that goes back to communication. Let's look at the downside. You can't just talk about, oh, this is going to go perfect. Like,
yes. Yeah. When you expect perfect, that's when the problems start.
oh yeah. And why not talk about your blind spots? And that's one of the things you see most people that I've dealt with that were ran their own money before working with me didn't realize their blind spots. They're like, oh yeah, I'm not very aggressive. And you look at the portfolio, it's like 96% stock.
Right.
Is aggressive just 100? Like, like they don't know what they don't know. And that's one of the things of like, hey, where is your blind spot? Where do we have weaknesses? What is that? The business school, the SWOT analysis, if you will, and we talk through it. And 97% of the time, this stuff won't happen, but you got to have a conversation. You got to do the fire drill before the fire.
Okay. Very good. Very good. All right. That was the last point that you had. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that covers it on there. And look, these are just high level ones. These are kind of make you think.
Right.
Everyone's situation is different. Hey, I'm going to inherit money or this or that. There's so many different things. Or where does Social Security play in all this? And at the end, we can get into the weeds. And that's why you book those appointments talking to me. But these are, hey, when we were talking about unF your finances, here's are some of those high level blind spots that you should be at least aware of on the front end. It always scares me when I get the referral. Oh, my friend's retiring next month and he needs an advisor. And it's like, well, do you have a financial plan? No, but I'm done working next month. I'm like, the fuck you are? Like, let's see these numbers. Like, you got $60,000 in credit card debt. Your ass is going back to work. Like,
yeah.
And that's why you got to start early on and you kind of get narrow. You come into that landing point. But I've had a couple that they're like, oh yeah, no, I retired last week. I'm like, can you get your job back? Like, is it too late?
Wow, that's crazy.
Because they didn't look at blind spots. They didn't maybe adjust for inflation. And look, I'm not sitting here with a calculator. I have some great tools to help me get through this, but I can look at the back of the napkin in that intro meeting. You're looking at seeing enough numbers. I can tell you how this one ends. Like,
yeah.
So have the conversation. It doesn't hurt to talk about it, or at least have your numbers run.
If they want to have the conversation, Nick, how can people find you?
Book that appointment through the website, stgeorgewealth.com. Email me, Nick at stgeorgewealth.com. Cell phone, text 828-481-8836. And of course, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I promise I won't bite. We can do phone calls, Zoom, but get those numbers run. Like, have them, like, and let's be honest, answering a 10 questionnaire on a Google search is not a financial plan.
Very good. All right, Nick, as always, it was a pleasure and entertaining.
I do my best, RJ. Thanks so much, as always.
You do a good job of laying it out, and there's always some humor with it. So we're looking forward to your next podcast, and thank you for listening to today's unF Your Finances podcast. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends and family. Until next time, for the next unF Your Finances podcast, I'm RJ Malik.
Thank you for listening to the unF Your Finances podcast. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.stgeorgewealth.com or give us a call at 828-481-8836. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of St. George Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC.
Any guests and their company or companies are not affiliated or endorsed by LPL Financial unless otherwise stated. Individual tax and legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal.